In today's podcast, I'm going to talk about specialization. Ooh, it's a dirty word.
You're here because you want more engagement, more delight, more fun, more learning. You're hungry for change and willing to take action.
If you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never come up with anything original.
Welcome to the eLearning Scenario Design Podcast with Anna Sabramowitz.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
Let's take learning to the next level.
All right, and welcome, and thank you for joining me today. I'm just so grateful that you tune in because that makes me feel like some of the things that I'm sharing with you, you're actually finding useful. Hopefully it pumps you up, gets you out there, and you want to do some fun stuff with scenarios. So thanks for returning and listening. So today I want to talk about specialization because I feel like specialization is a dirty word out there because, the demands of our work today, the demands of the things that we do as people working in this big digital, as I'm concerned, digital economy, it makes us do a lot of things that we're not necessarily good at. And I get it. I've seen the ads for people. I've been in those jobs where you basically are doing 3 jobs or sometimes 4 jobs in one, where you're a trainer, you're an instructional designer, you're a graphic designer, multimedia developer, you're also a project manager, you're probably a photographer, you maybe do a bit of code, all those things that not only require a huge technical aspect, but also demand a really good set of people skills. Because as far as I'm concerned, what we do is broker information, right? We take information from one person and we translate it into something useful for another person. And we're kind of the middleman that makes all that magic happen. And the goal is to get the people who are experts in their field and the top performers to get them to unpack what they're doing so that we can then turn that into something valuable for people who are wanting that skill, right? And I know that there are conversations about, how that isn't fair, and it's not fair, but life's not fair, right? We're not going to argue whether it's fair for somebody to demand of you to be 4 different jobs at a time. That's simply, that's for us to carve out. That's for us to decide what are those limitations within the workplace. And sometimes, because of where we are at, because of the size of our departments, because of all kinds of other types of things, we take on roles and positions and activities and tasks that really aren't the optimal use of our time. Guess what? Been there myself. It's not cool. So the one thing, though, is I don't want there to be some sort of a fatality here that this is the reality of our world. We can't do anything about it. I don't ever want for somebody to think that they can't actually become a specialist in something, because that's what makes you become good at that task and actually deliver more value. So I think, and hopefully if you're listening to this, you agree with me, is that the best way to actually become a master at something is to specialize, and you do that by investing in yourself. And to be honest, I think there's a lot of people out there who wait for somebody else to give them that, hey, we'll pay for you, or hey, we'll send you on this course, or we'll send you to this conference or something. But the deal is that you got to own that. And that doesn't stop at a single event. That's got to be something that happens over time, right? You got to affect that change, you have to invest in yourself. In fact, one of the things that I heard earlier this year, and it's made me think about projects a different way, is I'm involved in many, many projects. However, one of those projects should always be a project that I'm working on for myself. And I'm not talking about a pet project, because there's a lot of people who work on pet projects and You could maybe get good at something with your pet project, but my pet project this year is me. And so you can decide what that's going to be, what aspect of yourself, what skill set you have that you're going to improve on. And years back, I realized that I was doing a lot of things, and they were all, in some ways, when you have a lot of balls in the air, you feel like you're dropping a lot of them and you're just trying to, not scuff the right balls. But what happens is if you're juggling too many things, what it does is it diminishes sometimes your sense of accomplishment, even though you're probably doing Herculean tasks and pulling off a lot of things, because you feel like you're not giving 110% to a single thing. That affects how you feel about yourself and your outputs, right? And so the reality is that a lot of us can't change that at our jobs. We can't change the fact that we have to juggle 10, 15, however many balls are up there, that we have to make sure things are rolling and the projects are being done, the people are keeping up with our things, the storyboards are getting done, all those things, the training's being booked. So, sometimes you're also in charge of, making sure there's snacks in the room, right? It's crazy the gamut. But one of the things that you can be in charge of is how you tackle the project of you. So I think if you're up for it, and I hope you are, unless otherwise then just stop listening to this podcast. But the idea is that for the next year, let's say, you invest in getting to be the best, world best in scenario design. And I think from all the places that I've worked is that you really need to double down on this particular skill, because from my work with, seriously, Habitat for Humanity to Michelin, to Rubbermaid, to Emerson, to Tesla, to all those different industries, but the scenario skill set, super valuable and useful in all of them. It does not matter. You get good at that skill set, and it is something you can do across the board. You will never lose that. That's an investment you make in yourself. So, if you decide that this year, the project that you're going to work on is you personally getting awesome, getting the best in the world, and you set that goal for yourself, and then you let all those other things still happen because they're going to happen, but you take the time to hone that skill and really refine what you're doing, I think that will take you to the next level. And I think it will make you feel like there's a momentum there that you might not be getting from the other projects you're working on. But this one is for you. And I get mail from people. I get basically stories about people feeling like they are trying to affect change. They care about the products they put out. They care about the people that they're trying to affect, like the learners, and they're trying to do a really good job, but they feel like they are by themselves in that quest. They feel like they don't have the support that they need to move forward. And also, a lot of times they feel overwhelmed with just the sheer volume of not being able to really dig down and say, this project is going to be the best ever, but I'm also putting other stuff on hold. It's very hard to do and nearly impossible for a lot of us to do. I know, because I've been there, seriously. And the other piece that was very hard for me years ago, I was working at this college, and I really was. It wasn't that I was naive, but I feel like I came in with just so much energy, and I had seen so many amazing scenarios, and I had just been exposed to basically everything. Like I binged on Michael Allen's books, which are all about basically e-learning, and also Ruth Colvin Clark's book, eLearning and the Science of Instruction. I read those things, and I wanted to use them And I realized that after I showed that book to my boss, she said, yeah, that's cool, but we don't do that kind of stuff around here. And the excuses were basically things like, we don't have the resources. Also, we don't have the expertise. Also, people here won't like that kind of stuff. It's too, it's too sophisticated, or it's too juvenile, or whatever it was, right? There was always something. And I realized that, that's years from then I realized this. I didn't realize it in a moment. In a moment, I was just crushed. I just couldn't believe how come these people couldn't see the potential that I could see in these scenarios, in this way of delivering learning that was a self-paced way of somebody to really practice something in a safe environment, but do it in a way that's really engaging because it's meaningful for them, and they're learning from basically this self-driven adventure that they get to choose what happens, and that autonomy helps them also build confidence when they enter the real world, because they've had a chance to make these decisions through the questions that they had to answer in this e-learning, right? And it's really not, I don't want to call it e-learning anymore. I just actually want to get away from that word, period, almost, because I think scenario design is a very cool realm all of its own. It can live in many, many media. E-learning is just one of them. And also, there's all this baggage around what e-learning is, and I've seen people call pages of text e-learning, and I'm not saying that that's not a good definition for what e-learning is, but I don't ever want scenarios to be considered on the same playing field as a page of text in a Flash player or an HTML5 player, because that's not e-learning to me. Our scenarios are a different beast, and I feel they are a more sophisticated beast and more meaningful beast. So that's my beast analogy there. So the other thing I thought about is that the reason somebody would, in some ways, the reason people tell you can't do stuff, it's not because they don't believe you can't do stuff. It's actually, I've stopped taking those things very personally, completely, because I realize those are their fears talking. They've probably tried things and failed, and they're just afraid to be afraid to let you know that they've failed. And they might be working through something, and that's fine. But I don't care about that stuff anymore, because the people who tell you can't do stuff, they actually should just, if you're being told you can't do things, that means you're actually pushing some kind of cool boundaries, and you should continue. If you're not being told not to do stuff, that usually means you're not doing anything significant. So that resistance, it just means that you're initiating some kind of change, some kind of momentum, and people are afraid of change. By gosh, own it. Own it. You're doing something awesome. So every time you see that resistance, think to yourself, this is something that is making people uncomfortable because it's new and better, or it challenges them. Let's see where this goes. So, I want you to decide with me if next year you're going to decide to be the world-class person at your company, at your workplace, at scenario design. And you're going to design amazing questions that provoke change. And here's the thing about questions, and I think I learned this from a mentor, and I think this is such a good lesson. A while back, I had a couple of projects that were just all going to kind of be launched at the same time. And there was a lot of moving pieces that we needed to get these things piloted and then refined. And it was just, let's just say I stayed up at night, like I would wake up and think about those things. And I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but for me, it is like this terrible track record of things going on in your head. And what happens is they basically want to drive you crazy. There is no solution. It's a loop of negative. It's a loop of frustration. It's a loop of, I don't even know how to solve this. And it just goes on and on and on and on. And it was rough. So my mentor, I shared this with him, and it was a vulnerable moment because I think we'll pretend we're just super tough and we can handle it all, and let's say yes to more projects, which is like totally works against you, right? Because then people will take advantage of you if you say yes all the time. So I said, I'm like, I'm working on these projects, and it's actually like there's actually some anxiety around that, and then when I wake up in the middle of the night, it actually just says, hey, 6 things are getting launched. Are you ready? You're going to be late. All these things, right? They're not going to come through. This thing you're waiting on, that's a bottleneck. Guess what? It's going to stay there. So all these things are basically affecting me negatively. And so he said he actually had the same experience a while back. And I think that we forget that regardless of how successful somebody is or where they're at in their life, every single day you have to be very diligent about maintaining your mental, like what kind of thoughts you let in and what kind of thoughts you let kind of basically repeat in your mind. Because if you let it, you can quickly lose an hour worrying about things that you can't actually affect, right? So it was kind of a relief to me that he said he also has those days still, because I really look up to him. And he said that one of the things that happened is he had the same thing. He woke up in the middle of the night. It was like 2 a.m. and this worry thing was just eating him up. And then what he did is, and I should have done this, I kind of thought of it. He got up and he said, I can't sleep because this is just driving me nuts. I'm just going to get up and go downstairs and just plan, think about this in a like a action focused way almost, and say to myself, the questions or the things I'm saying right now are not helping me. How can I ask a better question? So what he did is he went downstairs and asked himself a question on that question. Instead of being the kind of question that closes the loop, it actually opens the loop of possibilities and helps you figure things out. So sometimes that's why I think questions are so powerful. And questions are what scenarios are. They're questions on how to solve problems. They're questions on how to address issues. And those questions can be very provocative, and they can actually force people to make changes. Just like they can force us to make changes if we become very, what's that word? Not persistent, but persistent is one of them. But the other word is being very focused and determined, and making sure that that's what we decide gets in there, that whatever circulates is up to us, right? So asking a better question actually makes all the difference. Like one of the questions that people ask themselves, and they've sent these questions to me, how come no one's on my side, right? And that's the question that just leads you down to the no one's on my side kind of thing. But what's a better question? A better question would be to say, hey, who is on my side that could actually help me? Who could I reach out to? Who could I maybe even if it's somebody who you used to work with before, a different company, who can I reach out to that can become a part of my support group? Who can I get ideas from? Who can I bounce ideas off of, right? Another question is, how come no one believes in my work? How come nobody believes that I can do it? Well, a better question is, how can I make this work that I'm doing valuable or helpful to someone else that they'll actually want to help me? Because it will help them. It'll give them, let's say, more prestige, more credibility, more ideas. Remember, people always like talking about themselves. People always think about themselves. There's nothing personal usually about when we get offended because somebody offends us, that's usually because something's going on with them. They're just thinking about themselves. So think about it. How can you leverage your project, your idea, by using somebody else's venture and say, hey, if you help me with this, this is how I can help you. This is how it'll make you better, your department better. You deliver better results. Let me do this with you. Let them have all the glory. You just want to get better at scenario design. You want to become world class. So I realized this the other day. Here's a statement. Feeling sorry for yourself actually feels really good. Now, I came to this realization while I was listening to like a podcast on my morning walk with my little dog, Mr. Chihuahua, Mr. Darcy. And the reason, so many of us are okay just playing around in that muck of self-pity is because it actually feels really good. It's kind of like, it's soothing, right? It soothes you to feel like somebody cares about you, and at that point it's very much you. So I've been there. I blamed my circumstances, blamed my dad, I blamed my coworkers. Everybody was to blame, and I felt sorry for myself. But the other thing I realized is that the circumstances around me are not at all under my control. Those aren't things I can control, but what I can control is my thoughts. And I can decide to be happy, and I can decide to take action and invest in myself and be pro. I can decide to be the best in the world at scenarios. And once you make that decision, there's nobody getting in your way, because you own that. You become the best, and then you own that, and you can take that with you. Nobody can take that away from you. So the same goes with your goal, this impact that you can have. Don't let anyone stand in your way of fulfilling your dream, of delivering work and experiences to people that you are super proud of, that you actually feel like you've made a difference. You need that. We need people like that in the world. And I'm hoping you can be one of those people. So sure, obstacles will be there. Like if there was no obstacles, then you'd probably just turn into like this lifeless blob. You need challenge to grow, right? If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. Actually, no, probably nobody would be doing it because it'd be easy. So I don't know if you've ever seen, I remember going with my mom years back to this university greenhouse. And in the middle of the greenhouse, this guy had some sort of like some kind of tropical tree. I don't know if it was like a rubber tree or something like that. And it was all propped up. It was probably 20 feet high. The greenhouse was ginormous. And it was propped up with all these sticks. And I was like, what happened to this tree? And he's like, trees aren't meant to grow in glass houses because there's no wind to whip them around, and they don't develop the strength to hold themselves up. And I thought about that and how profound that is. That the tree looks good for a while, but eventually it plops over because it hasn't faced enough challenge and resistance to be able to hold itself up. So, what am I saying? Why am I telling you stories about trees? I want you to drink my Kool-Aid here and let me help you get amazing at scenario design. And one of the things when we can become specialists, I know you're going to have to do other things. That doesn't mean you drop all those other things. But what you do now is you decide to become a master. And trust me, when you do that, when you invest in yourself and then you dedicate that time to actually become the best in the world, nothing stands in your way. People seek you out, people appreciate your advice more, and people respect your time more because you're seen as somebody who's an expert. So let's get serious about this. Let's make your scenarios have people take notice. Now, one more thing about specialists here, because I think that for some reason, we are not thinking about this the right way. Specialization is a great thing. Think about doctors. There's general doctors that you see at the walk-in clinic, and then there's like brain surgeons. So guess who gets paid more? And guess who gets more respect? People who dig in deep and get good at something, right? It's the brain surgeon who's going to get paid more. And also, if the generalist says something, I'm going to be like, okay, well, can I get a second opinion? I want to talk to a specialist who deals with this stuff. That's exactly where you want to be. So specialize in a skill. It doesn't mean you don't do other things, but this skill is one you can apply in so many industries and areas and skill sets. Imagine if for the next year you committed to just putting out kick-ass scenarios, and not for anybody else, but for you to refine. Instead of waiting for someone to give you permission to actually do it, you just took it. And if you want permission to take yourself to the next level, Boom, you got it. Invest in your own skill set. Now, refuse to listen to those cynics and the naysayers that tell you that it can't be done, we don't have the funds, we don't have the resources or the experts, you can't talk to the top performer. Remember, no victory without opposition. That's fine. It's hard, I get it, and those people wear you down, they make you doubt yourself, they depress you, and don't worry, just keep on moving towards Everest. And like people who climb those really, really high mountains, they don't look at the pinnacle and then beat themselves up because they're not there yet. The idea is you're supposed to look down at your boots, the tops of your boots, and you watch those boots as you make those steps, and you just make sure that you're making one step at a time towards your goal. And eventually, like you look up once in a while to see where you're at to orient yourself, but most of the time you're focusing on the daily execution of those steps, and that's what gets you to Everest. So you do this, you'll join the ranks of change makers. I know they're already out there. I've talked to them. And listen, I've done this. I'm not special. I just took up some positive self-talk. I got fed up with people telling me I couldn't do it, and I figured out a way that I could do it without needing to ask for their permission. It's a whole lot of work, but it's so worth it because the investment is in you, in yourself. So let's turn pro at this scenario design thing. Let's do stuff that makes us super proud, and things that actually make a change, that ask provocative questions, that help people do things better or excite people to actually want to learn things, or help people figure out that they have gaps and they need to fill those gaps, and we're providing them with some awesome resources. Let's kick butt this year. Are you with me, friend? All right. I'll talk to you next week. Take care.
You're listening to the eLearning Scenario Design Podcast with Anna Sabramowitz.